Isolation. It's a word that I feel like has grown in popularity after the rise of many YouTube videos promoting the lone wolf, walking this path alone, and that all you need to do to succeed in life is blocking off everybody. And yes, while I believe isolation, there are appropriate scenarios to isolate, for example, school. Reflecting on this past year, I isolated quite a bit. I was dealing with school, work, military, family obligations, and it was a lot. Many times I had to lock myself up in a room and just really hone in and focus on the projects and homework I had in order to succeed. And yet, as I was isolating myself, I couldn't help but feel empty, sad, anxious. And although I was succeeding in life, I was getting my assignments in, I was doing well in work, I felt empty. And this just goes back to the fact that humans, we are relational beings and we need each other. We can't go through life alone. We need each other. We need to be in fellowship. And this made me think of a verse in Hebrews. And I'm going to read that for you guys. And it says, "And let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near." This is Hebrews 10:24-25. Isolation, it is dangerous. We must be in fellowship. After reading this verse, I reflected and realized that we need to be in fellowship. We can't isolate ourselves. It's too dangerous. Going off this verse, I've made 3 points of why isolation is dangerous and why we need to be in fellowship as Christians. Okay, so the first point I wanted to talk about is strength and community. I watched this YouTube video about this valedictorian, and at his speech, he concluded that he should have spent more time in his relationships. He regretted all the time he put in his studies and neglecting his friends because he realized that in the end, relationships are what truly matter. And as Christians, brothers and sisters, we cannot be in isolation. We must initiate, we must be in fellowship because that's how we're gonna get through this life. During the hard times, that's more of a reason why we need each other. You know, the US Air Force even promotes this. The US Air Force, when I was in boot camp, told us never leave a wingman behind. We couldn't leave anywhere without our wingman. And thinking about it, if the US Air Force, and most importantly, the scripture promotes camaraderie, being in fellowship, being with one another, I'd rather put those things above a YouTube short that tells me to isolate myself and grind alone. Brothers and sisters, I wanted to challenge you and challenge myself to reach out to one another when times are difficult. During these trials, that's more of a reason why we should get together. We shouldn't isolate. We need to reach out, especially in the difficult times. And that brings me to my second point. All right, so the second point is encouragement fuels growth. I can't think of a single trial that I've gone through without the help of a brother, sister, or family member that has encouraged me through it. Christians, we can't go through trials alone. We need to rely on each other. And when your friend is going through a trial, we need to be there with them. We need to be a good friend and be an encouragement to one another. We need to look at Christ because Christ is the greatest example of what a friend should be. Christ, he loves even when he wasn't loved back. He was humble, he was patient, he was kind. And oftentimes, I would isolate myself because I felt like my friends weren't real. I felt like they wouldn't reach out to me. But that is totally wrong mindset to have. If anything, we need to exemplify Christ. We need to reach out, encourage, not because we are expecting something in return, but because we love the person. And that's what fuels it. It's love. It's love for one another. Brothers and sisters, I challenge you guys, be that good friend. In order to have good friends, you gotta be that good friend. So the last point is preparation for the coming of Christ. I think of the times where my parents have given me a chore and I don't do it. They come back to the house with clothes on the ground, and the amount of guilt and shame I feel at the end is terrible. And that's what's going to happen if we don't obey these commandments. This is a commandment to meet with one another. The day is drawing near. The day is drawing near in which Christ is coming back. So that should fuel us to meet with one another, not neglect the meeting of the church, not neglect meeting with one another, to encourage each other, to be that good friend, because Christ is coming back. And that should ultimately encourage us to proclaim the gospel. Proclaim the gospel for those who don't know it. So brothers and sisters, I hope this scripture encourages you as it has encouraged me. I pray that this encourages you to see the value of community, the value of the church, to see that we are called to encourage one another and to be motivated by the coming of Christ.